Exhibit 126. I wrote to Donna Cameron about needing to have an injury report regarding my work-related hurt finger, hand, and also I wanted her to sign the document. Exhibit 127. Donna Cameron wrote to me. She avoided the meeting as she initially agreed to. Once again, it was regarding my work-related injury to my finger and hand, etc. Meaning the pain is sometimes in my arm. Exhibit 128. I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton about my foot injury and that it kept getting worse and that I needed to complete some workers' compensation papers. My foot was hurt at 2600 Kansas. My head injury took place at a school on Washington. Exhibit 129. It's the February 4th, 2010 certified mail certificate to the Workers' Compensation Department. Latoya Greenwood signed the document from the post office. I was supposed to service. Page 1 of my injury report to my hand. It consisted of 2 pages. Three pages. Here's page 1 of the report regarding my foot injury that took place at 2600 Kansas. Exhibit 130 and 131. Are medical records that relate to my hand and foot injuries, 130 and also 131. 130 for the hand, 131 for the foot. Related to the hand injury is this particular document. There are numerous documents that relate to my hand and foot injury. I saw a number of doctors for help with my hand, and one good one for the foot. But certainly, the hospitals, they gave me some help also, for the doctors and the hospitals regarding the hand and foot. Which relates to the hand injury. A physician wrote a nice note regarding Teresa Watson, myself. This is a well-developed, well-nourished female in no acute stress. She is alert, interactive, and appropriate in all respects. Talks about my elbow and forearm and wrist and some other things regarding the finger and hand injury. Regarding the foot injury, this doctor decided to write a nice note also. Well developed, well nourished, and with good attention to hygiene and body habitus. There's the 8th. The 30th. And a nice note. There's the 10th. A little out of order here. The dates are. Very nice note. And regarding the foot again. Very nice note. Moving to Exhibit 132. I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton. It's got my official title of media technician. Once again, I was hired as a media technician to work in the computer lab with students. I mentioned that librarian and media specialist is on the evaluation form. Yeah. She gave me Emma Smith Hamilton was the only person that attempted to do an evaluation out of all of my time of being hired with East St. Louis Spring District 189, and it was a harassing outcome. Exhibit 133. While at 2600 Kansas, I composed this communication for the staff there. And I was also hoping that it would discourage more harassment. The email just mainly said what was available in the library and made everybody welcome to come. Exhibit 134. Is Emma Smith Hamilton sending me a note. Exhibit 135. It's a note from Emma Smith Hamilton. Ignoring my attempts to discourage her joining the conspiracy. As mentioned, related to the Exhibit 8, meaning Saturday Night Live, calling these kinds of people hellhole makers, how it would relate. And also U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder referring to this kind of behavior as the climate. He mentioned that he would be looking to change the climate. Here is Exhibit 136. I wrote to Mary Hamilton, I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton about her harassing note that she left at my seat. Exhibit 137. I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton correcting my name on the unfair evaluation. Once again, out of all of my time working at the school district, there was only one attempt to do an evaluation, and here it was attempted by Emma Smith Hamilton. For harassment purposes. Exhibit 139. I wrote to Princess Hayes about Emma Smith Hamilton calling me to the phone as I exited 2600 Kansas. And it mentions that Princess Hayes was on the phone line waiting. I expressed the simple meaning of the 12310 letter to Princess Hayes. This is mentioned in the email. I expressed that Donna Cameron testified that her verbal abuse for more than disorderly conduct only ended after I went to make a phone call on 8/24/09. So here it is, a Q2310 email. Speaking of the 8/24/09 event. I share that I hope to continue to be employed. Exhibit 140. I wrote an email to Princess Hayes about not hearing from workers' compensation or the office there at 1005 State Street that should have responded to my report regarding my hurt hand and hurt foot. These injuries took place while in the workplaces. Exhibit 141. I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton about waiting for her unfair evaluation papers. Exhibit 142. I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton about being off as directed by medical professionals regarding my foot injury. Exhibit 143. Relates to a certificate of mailing related to workers' compensation regarding my hurt hand and hurt foot at work. The injuries were sustained at work, as mentioned. Exhibit 144. I wrote to Princess Hayes requesting that the unfair retaliation stop. I mentioned our 3/3/10 meeting. I mentioned the unneeded, unfair, and pure unreasonable request that they were trying to make of me, meaning to discuss my refusing the sexual advances of Mary Davis, Lonzo Greenwood, Bridget Howell, more subtle ones from Rowena Lewis and Leonard Scobie. In the telephone hearing regarding unemployment, further in the exhibit, once again, I share that I am a heterosexual, and my views are based on that in monogamous and biblical principles. Exhibit 145. Before going to 145, Exhibit 144 also mentions the ripple, snowball, domino effect of harassment. Once again, Saturday Night Live has its way of referring to it, and so does U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. in Exhibit 8 and Exhibit 188. Here it mentions that Princess Hayes accepted the 8-page evaluation response from me. This email shares of how Union Representative Bridget Howell came to greet me and falsely said that I had requested her for the meeting with Princess Hayes. And here Bridget Howell is also mentioned in acknowledging my foot injury. Bridget Howell of General Service Employees, Local 382, in those days at least. Exhibit 145. It's my 8-page evaluation response. Page 1. I shared of how I did my assignments and how I did others, and how I met and exceeded expectations. Exhibit 146 is the same evaluation response from me, showing that it was received by the school district on March 3rd, 2010. 146 and also 147 relate to the evaluation responses. And Exhibit 146, 189, District 189 gave EEOC a copy. And Exhibit 147, Local 382 gave EEOC a copy of this 8-page evaluation response from me. Exhibit 148, I wrote to Monique Luster saying that I had not gotten a response from my early February submission of workers' compensation papers. It mentions that I had submitted injury report papers from Memorial Hospital of cases that related to my foot injury. It mentioned that I was concerned about the treatment and the possibility of more retaliation and further injury to my injuries. It mentions that Princess Hayes told me that Monique Luster sat quietly and observed during meetings that Princess Hayes called me into, and that she observed as Princess Hayes and I talked. During one of the meetings, I asked if we would talk about workers' compensation. Princess Hayes said that we would do it later. So that was a common thing to say later from these officials. Exhibit 149. I wrote to Monique Lester. I mentioned that we had just spoken minutes ago. I mentioned that the approximate injury date was rejected by her some. I mentioned that she threatened to withhold the claim number. I mentioned that she doubted that my injury happened at work to my foot. I mentioned of how she sat quietly in the meetings without introducing herself and her position. Exhibit 149. Exhibit 150. I wrote to Monique Lester. I expressed that I appeared at the Board of Education to give the approximate date of my foot injury, and that she forced me to rewrite the information on new workers' compensation papers, and that she still did not give me a claim number for my appointment that I had regarding my foot injury. Exhibit 151. I wrote to Monique Lester. I shared that I was leaving for my foot injury appointment, and I asked for the carrier, our insurance company, for workers' compensation. Exhibit 152. Emma Smith Hamilton wrote to me. She also sent a copy to Princess Hayes and Teresa Saunders. It was about wanting me to stay in an empty or near empty building after everyone had left. Exhibit 153. And let me add, regarding staying in the empty building, I never did. After this retaliation and harassment escalated, I would leave the premises to be safe or safer. Exhibit 153. I wrote to Emma Smith Hamilton. It reveals that I refuse to stay in an empty building or near empty building. It mentioned my assigned report in and out time, and it mentioned my evaluation response. Exhibit 154. Emma Smith Hamilton wrote to me about her assigned report in and out time with a typo. Exhibit 155. I wrote to Princess Hayes. It was regarding a meeting that was scheduled on my spring break, when school was closed, and I should not have been scheduled for a meeting. Also in Exhibit 155, Princess Hayes informed me that I did not have to stay in a near or an empty building, and I had already began or continued to leave at 3 p.m. Exhibit 155. Moving to 156, 155 is already mentioned. 156. Emma Smith Hamilton wrote to me and shared that Princess Hayes said that I should not attend a training on the next day. Some exhibits ago, when I mentioned 125 South 10th Street, Donna Cameron had come by to ask and eventually asked where was the library worker, and I shared that she was at a meeting. So I was supposed to be hurt or offended that I was not allowed to go to the meeting. Once again, I was hired as a media technician and was told by Princess Hayes that I should work with students in the computer lab. Exhibit 157. I wrote to Princess Hayes. I mentioned her two untrue comments. I mentioned the two parts to this unwarranted and harassing hearing that took place on 5/3/10. I mentioned that once I left the hearing, I was called back from the parking lot to come back into the hearing as more harassment. I shared of a conversation held with union representatives during part 2 of the unwarranted hearing. But there was no information to share, no more new information. All of this was related to Donna Cameron trying to provoke me on 8/24/09, feeling that the time was right, being that she had harassed me so much already. She failed to get the response that she wanted. She requested an unwarranted hearing, which took place on 10/6/09, and here it led to a 5/3/10, once again, unwarranted hearing. Exhibit 157. Again. Exhibit 158. I wrote to Princess Hayes. I shared that no mail came 5 days after 5/3/10, as Lonzo Greenwood said it would. I requested to review any information that the committee had come up with before they submitted it to the board. Exhibit 159. East St. Louis School District 189 to the entire community and beyond. Here's another part of that exhibit, 159. Consider approving the termination. And this was from the 5/18 school board meeting. That's exhibit 159. Also, exhibit 160. I wrote to school board members. It mentions that no findings were found after the 5/3/10 unwarranted hearing, that there was no need for the granted unwarranted 10/6/09 hearing that Donna Cameron requested. There was no need for the extreme request of me to discuss my heterosexual, monogamous, and biblically based views in an unneeded and unwarranted setting. And it mentions that the union had not been properly representing me. Once again, Donna Cameron did confess to Linda Baldwin of General Service Employees Local 382 that her disorderly conduct toward me only ended after I made a phone call. Again, that will be available in a newly arranged or found or located part of Exhibit 115. Exhibit 115 will now have 3 parts. It was mentioned to attorneys, judges, and in court documents that the possibility may happen for new exhibits. Exhibit 161. I sent a document to EEOC. Those are the certificates of mailing. These are multiple mailings to EEOC. Exhibit 161. Exhibit 162. EEOC wrote to me and shared of the charges of discrimination, race, sex, meaning sexual harassment, religion, retaliation, and my workplace-related hurt hand and hurt foot. Exhibit 163. The EEOC wrote to the Illinois Department of Human Rights regarding my case of employment discrimination. Exhibit 164 relates to an envelope from the Illinois Commission of Human Rights. Exhibit 164 relates to my case and the Illinois Commission of Human Rights.